to listen to this for 15 days straight, just to be safe.
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
I'm Cameron Reigle.
And our guest on this episode was, like me, a fixture of the Scribe's letter column back on Rare's classic website from the late 1990s and early 2000s. Unlike me, he's actually done something with his life. He joined Rare in 2003, working quality assurance on games like Grab by the Ghoulies, where he misunderstood the nature of the Reaper in comparison to the other Ghoulies, the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country 2, where he painstakingly focus group tested the names of every single racing ostrich, and Banjo-Pilot, where he apparently missed the fact that Espresso was still in the game. He moved up the ranks, becoming part of the creative team for the famously non-DKU game Cameo Elements of Power, and then racked up credits on games like Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts and the Kinect Sports Trilogy. He then left Rare in 2014, then rejoined Rare in 2015 to help shepherd Rare Replay and Sea of Thieves. He then left Rare a couple of years after that to become a freelance writer, to help shape the lore of Rare, of which he's written a significant amount for Sea of Thieves Tall Tales. Also, if you like Doctor Who, you can find his writings and reviews on Den of Geek. His debut novel, Sea of Thieves, Athena's Fortune, was released in October of 2018, and we just finally discussed it on the Kongversation a month or so back. Please welcome to the show, Chris Allcock.
My God, even I'm bored by my own resume. Hello, Hyle, and hello, Cameron, and thank you for having me. It has been a while in the making.
It has, yes. So, full disclosure, you do chat with us on a regular basis as you sort of crash our Sea of Thieves streams every week.
Yeah. I consider it being a sort of a helpful dynamic tutorial for the players who need it most.
Yeah. Our well-populated Sea of Thieves streams.
Especially Jeff.
Obviously, there's a level of familiarity with us already. So, before we begin, I want to take a moment to allow our listeners to better acquaint themselves with you. So, if you will, what are your top 30 favorite Rare games in countdown form?
In countdown form? Well,
yes.
Level 30 is... Level 30? That's wrong. I've already messed it up. I'm sorry, Hyle, I have to go. Daily, come on and discuss Crazy Crimeland. No, I kid. That is mine. That episode is mine.
We're not discussing Crazy Crimeland. I don't want to wade in those waters.
The sort of swampy waters of the fourth stage in Crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I can understand that. Well, I have a whole bunch of favorite Rare games, but I guess the best place to start is where I kind of got into Rare as a whole. And like so many of you, it should have been Donkey Kong Country, but it wasn't.
Was it Metroid?
I should have been Metroid. Should have been a really, really kind of raunchy, innuendo-filled Metroid. But no, we had to wait until Team Ninja did that. My favorite Rare games growing up, I didn't know they were Rare games. The first time it really clicked for me wasn't Donkey Kong Country, which I borrowed from a friend in what America would say was high school. It was Blastcore. I kind of bypassed Killer Instinct. I didn't have an NES growing up until a lot later, so I never kind of got into the classic Taboo, Sesame Street, Jeopardy trifecta that makes so many people fall in love with Rare. I had a very kind of muted upbringing, and honestly, my first experience with Banjo-Kazooie was that I hated it, which...
Oh, this is getting off to a great start already. I can't wait till the news sites take that quote.
Yeah.
Writer of official Sea of Thieves novel hates Banjo-Kazooie.
I despises it. No. I had gotten into a rapport with my cousins who were a bit younger than I was, of going around to their house on visits with my parents because, you can't drive. If your mom or dad decides you're going to a relative's for a visit, then you go there. And they had played Banjo-Kazooie, and I was the older cousin, and they were lost or stuck somewhere. They gave me the game. I couldn't make heads nor tails of it. I didn't know how to do a talent trot. I didn't know how to do a beaky bongalong, all the famous moves that there are in Banjo-Kazooie. I was running around, there was too much talking, and I really didn't get on with it. It wasn't until I was looking a little bit later to spend some birthday money, and I saw Banjo-Kazooie on a shelf in the shop, and I was like, oh, that's that game I hate. But then I noticed the Rare logo, and for the first time, everything kind of coalesced, and I was like, that's the logo from Donkey Kong Country, and it was on Blastcore, and I really like Blastcore. I'm going to give this game a second chance. And because I gave the game a second chance, Rare went from strength to strength.
Interesting. So, I can't wrap my head around Blastcore being your first. Like that's
well, it was my first known first. The first kind of Rare game I recognized. Like I'd played DKC in high school, and DKC 2, but I think you may have mentioned this on a conversation long ago. But when you don't really recognize who makes a game, you just know that you like the game.
Yeah.
And then there comes that kind of moment where, oh, that logo means the same group of people, which means it might have the same kind of things that I enjoy in it.
Yeah, I mean, Donkey Kong Country was where I first started recognizing Rare as an entity, but I had also played some of the Battletoads and RC Pro-Am. I didn't make that connection until after the fact. I was like, what?
I can't even remember when it happened for me. I just sort of had this moment that clicked where, all of these games I really like that are definitely the prettiest games I played on either of these systems have this logo at the front.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to check out Sesame Street now. I can't wait for the podcast we do on that.
I think you'd enjoy Captain Skyhawk. There's a very deep lore.
I played that. Yes, I did play Captain Sky. Is it Hawk or Hook?
Skyhawk, yeah. Definitely.
Skyhook. I don't even know what that is, but I always want to say Captain Skyhook. But yes, I did play it. I remember it was published by Milton Bradley here in the US, which they're like the board game company. So I didn't really imagine it was that great. I was like, they don't know how to make video games. I'll put this in and it'll just essentially be a flap of cardboard on my TV. But it was actually, then I noticed later on, when we were just going through a nostalgic NES lazy day where we just dusted off the old console.
As you do.
We put that in, and it was like, oh my god, Rare made this. What? How long have they been around?
Yeah, I think the first out there case of that sort of thing for me was Mickey's Racing Adventure on the Game Boy Color, which I had just gotten as a gift, and then slowly over the years started to realize, oh, this is like RC Pro-Am injected with an adventure game, and I didn't know what that was when I got this game.
The fact that you got it as a gift suggests that Martin Wakely is somehow a member of your family, and you've never known it.
All of the Mickey Speedway lineage of games, we still get grief on DK Vine for not covering them, because there are a contingent of people who feel we must cover them, that they are somehow part of the shared universe that we cover, and they're outraged that we don't, which is always my favorite part of the job of what I do.
Look, you just gotta wait for that Pluto's digging puzzle, Tall Tale.
If you covered them, and I don't want to drag you down this rabbit hole because I troll you with this too far on streams, but if you did cover the Mickey games, what would that mean for the Kingdom Hearts series? Would they become cameo games, or? Well,
it depends on if any Disney characters debuted in a video game in those games versus had they appeared before, and because we couldn't follow them religiously if they didn't debut in that game. So it's why there are questions. For example, Conquer Live and Reloaded. We haven't even asked any proper questions yet. We're already going on bizarre tangents. Conquer Live and Reloaded.
Whoops, all tangents.
When you reserved the game, you got a bonus disc that includes a documentary where it's like Celebrity Squirrel. It's
is that the one with Ryan Stiles in?
Ryan Stiles from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yes.
From both the UK and US edition, so it's a universal reference there.
Yes.
But Ryan Stiles, among other B and C list celebrities, appear in it, and the thing is, if they ever appeared in another video game, we would then have to follow them because they are Conquer characters by video game definition. So, believe it or not, this is something I think a great deal about every single day of my life. So, the idea of Disney characters, had they become part of the shared Rare universe or the DKU or whatever, would I then have to follow them in later games? Had James Bond, had GoldenEye actually like featured an appearance by Rare's Donkey Kong, then the question would be, do we keep following James Bond, or is it just Pierce Brosnan's James Bond? What happens when they reboot GoldenEye with Daniel Craig? Things like that. So, like, Judi Dench's M would have really thrown us for a loop there.
She would have gotten into the Hall of Fame well beyond Wrinkly Kong, I feel. Although, if you have never paid close attention to who is driving the bus in the streets level of GoldenEye, I would suggest that now is the time.
2020 has been strange enough. I wouldn't be completely taken aback by having to reevaluate past N64 games at this point. Anyway, so I don't even think we got into any of your top 30 Rare games.
No, we really didn't.
What's your number one Rare game?
My number one Rare game is a very difficult question. No, it isn't. It's a difficult question. It's an easy answer, and that answer is Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest.
Oh, controversial take there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our listeners are going to be outraged.
It's one of my top 3 platformers of all time, alongside Super Mario Brothers 3. Not Super Mario Bros, YouTubers. It's not Bros. There's a dot. And Bubble Bobble, which is probably not considered a platformer so much, but I consider it a platformer, and it's one of the... given that it came out like in the same year, arguably, because no one knows when Super Mario Brothers released, as Super Mario Brothers, it's got so much more depth to it in terms of random items and hidden doorways and shortcuts, and just so much more replayability, even. It is foundational and has amazing music, and I love Bubble Bobble, even if I can't say it.
That is a rental title for me that I never really got into, but I will say that I do advocate for them to be in Smash Brothers. I feel like there should be some love for Bubble Bobble.
Like the Ice Climbers, using that, like Bub and Bob together.
Yes.
They could rescue one another with bubbles, and that would be amazing. Let's do that.
All right, well, Donkey Kong Country 2, I think, Cameron, are we all on the same page there before we move on? Can we all agree Donkey Kong Country 2
I think it's DKC's
best?
2 for me as well.
The thing about DKC 2, though, is that, for me, I didn't like pirates before DKC 2, right? I never got pirates. As an American who, went to the ocean once a year, I didn't understand the appeal of a bunch of dirty men in poofy shirts sailing around, and it was Donkey Kong Country 2 that kind of showed me pirates through the prism of Rare and said, no, this is actually what pirates can be. And then I got it, and I was a pirate fan from then on, and I could go back and actually enjoy piratical things. And so Donkey Kong Country 2 is actually a nice stepping stone towards Rare's latest game. I'm discounting Everwild because it's not out yet. Sea of Thieves, which, of course, Chris, you are well acquainted with. And
I'll be honest. I'll be honest with you, Hyle. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. I'm very curious.
Well, I suggest you go back and you watch the E3 2016 gameplay trailer.
Okay, let me do that in a second. I'm just going to scrub through the. Oh, it's you! Look at your little cheeks there.
I know. I've lost some weight since then. I don't like going back and looking at me because I've lost about 20 pounds.
I just pinched it off your cheeks. Your adorable cheeks.
I guess we're mostly going to be talking about Athena's Fortune here.
Yes.
And Bubble Bobble. But how did you get the opportunity to write the novel? Had it been before you kind of left Rare and went freelance, or was it a case of Adam Park and Pete Hentz kind of needing an author for the official novel, and you were just in their office at the time, or did you have to rigorously audition for it? How did it come about?
That's a very good question, Hyle, and I'm going to answer it as diplomatically as I can. Back in 2016, Rare Replay was over, and the rest of the team were rapidly being poached to go and work on mostly the project that would become Sea of Thieves, but also one or two for the project that would become Everwild. And the rest of us was sort of spun up into a marketing team, because Rare Replay had done something very unusual in that it had come from nowhere. Marketing were unsure about, well, okay, we have a studio's anniversary, but a lot of these titles aren't Xbox titles. Is it really going to mean that much? And so a lot of the kind of creative oomph of selling Rare Replay as a project was put on us. As opposed to how Microsoft had often worked back then, which was, you guys keep making the game and we will go away and market it. Which I think has actually worked out really well, because since then, Rare has been a lot more kind of hands-on, like Sea of Thieves and its We Shall Sail Together trailer. That was something that was very much dreamt up and coordinated in-house with the support of the Xbox marketing team. And that, I think, really helped kind of sell the E3 2015 version with the pirate waking up on the beach and coming down to the ship and like really sold the kind of the dream of it. But the 2016 version really helped to kind of sell the tone and the scope of what Sea of Thieves could be. So we were kind of in this mindset of going, okay, well, the rest of us who were working on Rare Replay are going to become this sort of marketing branding team, and we're going to go out and upon from there. So I spent a little bit of time working with the Sea of Thieves team to kind of ground the very basics of the story. So I spent some time working with Mike Chapman to sort of talk about the trading companies. Who were the initial trading companies going to be? What did they want? Where would they come from? Who might their enemies be? I guess I'll interrupt myself here to kind of go. Initially, I pitched to Mike 8 trading companies, and there were 4 groups in opposition to another 4 groups. So, for example, you could kind of hand your skull into the Order of Souls who wanted to use it for what the Order does, or you could kind of hand it into an archaeologist society, and they might kind of be the other end of the scale, where if you gained rep by handing something into the Order of Souls, the archaeologists would think less of you. And
oh my god,
the Hunter's Call, for example, who were there as the Gourmands, their counterparts would be this kind of animal preservation society, that kind of thing. So that was an initial pitch. Very much pie.
Now I want that. Now I hate the game that it's not in there.
Yeah, it was totally pie in the sky, and I think ultimately the version that we have where
you're just playing the long game to make Hyle feel bad about his reputation with the Hunter's Call.
Yeah, you're trying to get me to catch less fish now. This is all just a way to get ahead of me.
No, Hyle. I'm trying to get you to catch fewer fish. Let's be.
You know what? Look, I am not the published author here, so I can use the language however I choose.
Yeah, you can whomever you wish. But so yeah, ultimately 8 was a little bit ambitious for pre-launch, but when I left Rare at the end of 2017, I had already worked with Paul Davies on getting Mattel's from the Sea of Thieves book out, and I'd worked on some very, very early stuff for the comics, and also the art book, where I had basically lured Ryan Stevenson. He's a problematic character now, but you know when in Family Guy, Peter lures James Woods into a room with pieces of candy?
I thought you were saying Ryan Stevenson was problematic.
No,
I was like, oh my god,
Ryan Stevenson is utterly lovely, and if you see him, you should hug him. Everybody.
I was like, oh no, Viva Pinata is ruined.
Regardless of what he's doing, hug Ryan if you see him. You will only go to prison for a while. But in order to kind of get the art book, I would kind of lure Ryan into these rooms and then point a microphone at him and just interview him remorselessly and get the stuff from that. So I was already, I'd kind of got the scent of blood from doing novels and books. And yeah, then we hit the end of 2017. Things were dying down a little bit. Adam was off, and I thought, this is so stupid, but when I was like 10 and people would go, oh, what do you want to be when you would grow up? I would go, oh, I don't know. When I was 13 and people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would say, well, I think when I'm grown up, I'll be a video game designer, because I'd already started like sketching out Mario and Sonic levels and stuff on graph paper for my own fun. And then when I'm 40, I'll become a writer like Terry Pratchett. And I never realized how that would come. But yeah, it got to the point where I was like, I'm really, really enjoying working with publishing houses and kind of fleshing these narratives out from nothing. I want to do more of this. And I'd kind of more or less made the decision of, I think I might go and try and do this with no experience as to how difficult it was going to be or what the hurdles were, or do you need to join a guild or anything like that. And Pete came into me and said, just so you know, they are planning on doing a Sea of Thieves novel. So we want your help on that. And I said, eventually, I want to be the author. I want to do it.
You've made me think about what I wanted to be when I was a kid. When I was age 5, it was a game show host.
Well, Hyle, I will have to say, I'm going to bet $200 against Cameron right now.
To soothe my shattered life dreams,
I would
please.
take that bet.
What is Ted the Boat Builder?
What is Ted the Boat Builder?
Yeah, that's a Jeopardy question, not a larger existential quandary.
What's a Jeopardy answer?
Oh, that's true. Oh, God, I've lost. I've lost to Cameron.
Yeah.
He beat me. Oh, one cut.
If you planted Ted the Boat Builder, would he become a tree that you could then make a boat out of?
And would that tree harvest evil acorns?
So basically, you got your foot in the door. Like, at that point, was it just like, it's yours, or did you have to, like, fight for it a little bit more? Gouge out some eyes? I
did like most writers do, and I put together an outline. I say most writers who are kind of working for a gig, because there are two tiers. You have your Terry Pratchett's, your Douglas Adamses, who have an agent, and they are kind of going, I have a writer, he has got this kind of credits behind him, and he or she is looking to write this book, publish it, you idiots. And then you have the kind of work-for-hire writers who are looking to write something that is going, which I guess... Paul Davies is a fantastic writer, but I think he had to probably go through that for the Tales of the Sea of Thieves book, in that he was known to Dark Horse as a writer, and they kind of went, okay, we have gotten this business opportunity to make the Tales from a Sea of Thieves book. Who are writers that would be a good fit? Paul Davies. He'd be great. Rather than Paul kind of wandering up and going, I want to write a pirate book. Went a bit Matt Berry there. I want to write a pirate book.
So when you write a tie-in novel for a game that's kind of ongoing, the way that Sea of Thieves is, it kind of seems like trying to predict the weather a little bit. Obviously, like anybody who's played the game is going to be familiar that with the layout of islands, the routine of sailing a ship. What was it like kind of having in mind, like trying to sort of predict the future and try to avoid like ultimately contradicting anything that would end up in the game itself that you put on the page?
I answer that question on two levels, which is the first one was I had a level of innate knowledge because, as I say, Mike and I had been chatting before the game was released, and although the book was released in late September 2018, early October, I think, in the US, it had been written and planned in January of 2018 before the game came out. So there were still some things that were up in the air. So in one way, I was kind of informed by the game, but in another way, I really had nothing to go on, so I didn't worry about it. I thought this novel has to be hit one way or the other, and we had already kind of met amongst ourselves and decided if there is going to be a problem with canon, we can say that it is all pirates tell conflicting stories, and there are several different accounts, and who really knows the real truth of what happened, that kind of thing, which is a long way from the Sea of Thieves that we have at the moment, where everything is pretty written down and nailed down, and I like it that way, but it was a good kind of emergency exit if we needed one.
I guess that kind of goes into another question I sort of had about the genesis of the novel. Like, as you said, they were looking to have a novel. What was it sort of that they expected from, like, were you told that they need a novel and it needs to take X character and get them from point A to point B, or was it a bit more freeform than that?
It was totally freeform. And this is very much driven by, I think, the kind of link that Hyle and I and that we all have of, I love the lore, and I love the intellectual exercise of diving into the bits that don't make sense and making them make sense. Whether it's two on guards on screen at the same time in Coral Capers, which is totally
Hard light hologram.
One of them is lanky.
time travel, or so that's worked well, or whether it's getting into the notion, just silly things like you can fire yourself out of a cannon in Sea of Thieves. Let's have Shan be the Tinkerer as a throwaway joke who makes that possible. But then actually you look into it a little bit further and you go, okay, well, we've got this unbreakable metal. What if Shan used that to boost the durability of the cannons so that they could fire pirates out? What if he invented that? That could be fun. And that links a lot of the stuff in the Athena Fortune novel. I have no idea to this day how much of that kind of weirdness flies over the heads from a cannon of people who haven't played the game.
Do you think people have read the novel who haven't played the game, or?
Well, you know, my mum. Well, no, she's played the game. She read the novel, and then I got a bunch of things about how she'd installed it on her PC, and she had gotten the hang of walking around islands, but hadn't figured out how to board a ship yet. And then someone came and she was on her ship, and someone kind of came and helped her and took her on an adventure around the Sea of Thieves. And this is, I don't know if I'm supposed to find this traumatic or sort of inspiring. Like when you guys kidnapped that child for that one stream.
That was me and Jeff. Don't implicate Cameron in this. But yeah, we abducted a child that was off stream.
Yeah, that could have been my mom.
Abducting is harsh. It's a harsh word.
It could have been that my mom in that exact same scenario. And yeah, I think we should all just take a few minutes to reflect on that.
No, I really did appreciate what the novel laid out as far as explaining the bits that really didn't have to be explained, but then having fun with it. It never feels like you're going down this checklist of, well, we have to explain why people can fire themselves out of cannons. It's just, it's more just this layered bit of silliness that enriches not only the novel, but when you go back and play the game, then you can say, oh, okay, so this is made from the metal taken from the chains that imprisoned Old Mother, the gigantic Kraken of ancient times.
Yeah.
And then Shan took that and he made all sorts of enchanted doohickeys with it, and that is part of everyone's ship now.
Yeah, or if it's not a canon that Shan made directly, the shipwrights in the Sea of Thieves have learned how to kind of replicate that, and now it's just standard.
Sure.
Yeah. It also helps reconcile like a very cartoony antic within the context of, like, I'd say Sea of Thieves is fairly grounded in what it does in its storytelling, but you do still have silliness like firing yourself out of a cannon and getting blind stinking drunk within 2 seconds.
And there's always going to be that level, because no matter how cinematic and how serious you try to make it when Pendragon pops up and goes, I'm glad you're here, I forgot to return this DVD, and the store is closed, and now it's a happy shopper, and I don't know where I'm going. And you have to help him on his quest to return a DVD that should have gone back 15 years ago. No spoilers. You always have that kind of core level silliness that even Half-Life, the king of video game narrative revolution, suffers from, which is you're not paying attention, you have free control, you're bouncing around, you're bunny hopping, you're putting hard drives on the head of Alex Vance and then seeing if you can stand on them. It's a real, there's a very much a disaffected nature that you have to assume that whenever you start a scene, a cinematic cutscene in a video game, your audience is not listening because they're making their own fun off in the corner somewhere, which is right and true.
Please don't do that, Joanna. It worries me.
Well, it upsets me because I'm the one nerd out there who's trying to intently listen to everything, making mental notes, reconciling it with preconceived notions, and then I have somebody like Red-Crested Reigle, our frequent crewmate over here, like lobbing firebombs at me, and I'm like, stop it! I'm trying to soak this in because it matters to me. That's why I miss the days when I could just read the instruction manual safely in my bedroom with nobody disturbing me.
Don't worry about it. But yeah, it's a null, and the number of lines I've kind of written, and Mike has done a great job of kind of going, is this obvious enough? I mean, I'm going, well, of course it's obvious enough, because he or she is going to say this line, and then I realise, no, actually, the player is probably not going to be looking at that character. They're going to be, at best chance, crowding round in like a group of 4 or trying to get the ultimate angle to take a screenshot, but more than likely they're setting each other on fire, or they're in the water, or some emergent skellies have come out, and so you need to back up any physical acting with lines of dialogue, and that means that you need to make everything a little bit more kind of on the nose.
Another thing that I really liked, well, it wasn't from your novel. It was
actually
contradicted by your novel.
Okay, come on, come at me.
In Sea of Thieves lore, this was a good thing. So, in the comic book, we had the idea, the quack medical notion that bananas are this miracle food that can cure and heal all ailments. And then in your novel, there is the theory posited that the Sea of Thieves, much like the island from Lost, has fast healing properties. So all wounds and near fatal scraps can be like healed quicker, to explain the in-game conceit of, oh, you have a broken leg and then it's almost immediately healed. And that got me wondering, you mentioned Paul Davies, who did the bulk of writing for the Tales from the Sea of Thieves journal, or in whatever, hand-me-down in-universe scribble book. And then Jeremy Whiteley has done the comics, which I just referenced. How much coordination did you have with them? Obviously, you did some work for the Tales from the Sea of Thieves book, but how much coordination did you have between them with the lore and then back and forth?
Quite a lot, I would say. When you're dealing with pros like Paul Davies, who has had sort of, a decade or more's experience writing for magazines and other media before I got there, and knows how to kind of spin a compelling narrative. I mean, it's Jeremy Whiteley, who understands comic books in a way, like how to sum up a sentence in a single panel. I mean, you have 30 words to cover a page, and you have 22 pages in a standard comic, and they somehow manage to get an entire plot, a meaningful, heartfelt narrative across in that, and that is amazing to me. So all I would really do with those guys is try and kind of steer them within the realms of the lore and the things that pirates wouldn't do and wouldn't say. So there's no blood, there's no swearing, that kind of stuff. I re-listened to your original Athena's Fortune literary analysis today, and you guys went on the level of violence question, and it gets ramped up a little bit towards the end of the book, and you were wondering if there were any standards and practices around that. It's mostly me trying to stay on tone. I don't think we've ever had a point so far where people have gone, no, that's too much. So it's just trying to keep it within the spirits of Sea of Thieves. But yeah, in terms of dealing with Jeremy and Paul, you need to just give them the facts, and they are skilled enough writers that they will kind of understand the tone, and they know what is true, and you can let them do their thing.
Interesting that you're your own standards and practices. I would have never taken you to be such a prude, Chris. I mean,
it's not just me. Obviously, there's Mike and there's Adam and there's Peter and other interested parties. But yeah, by and large, if there's something... back in the day, I coined a term. We were starting to work... This is back before I left Rare to become a full-time writer. I was aware that when third parties for toys and comics and anything else, and even like a toy needs like a paragraph blurb, people were coming at the game with a very kind of not Call of Duty, but codified approach to pirates, and that kind of, "Yah, mateys, ye be sailing aboard the Sea of Thieves, and we be scurvy bad dogs," with all that kind of stuff. I named that the Barbosa threshold. Which was the idea that the character in Sea of Thieves, who is in Pirates of the Caribbean, rather, who is that sort of
the most traditionally
gnarled,
the idea of a pirate.
it's like he's almost made of gnarled teak, and he's all wooden and the evil and sort of inflexible in that term is Barbossa. And I basically said we don't have characters who talk like Barbossa, because it would be so infuriating.
What you just brought up sort of reminds me of my favorite example, or my least favorite example, of poor media translations of comics and an outside company coming in and just completely misinterpreting the tone. And that was the 3-issue Street Fighter comic book series from the early 90s, published by Malibu Comics. Ooh. And they completely misinterpreted the tone of Street Fighter 2 to be Mortal Kombat, essentially, but they even upped the violence above where Mortal Kombat sometimes is. And I remember distinctly, I think there was a panel where the character of Ken got scalped, and Ryu found his blonde hair and his scalp just laying in a bloody heap, and he held it in one hand and then his fist in the other, and he went, no, with tears streaming down his face. And as a kid, I was like, what the hell is this? It traumatized me.
I thought you said he held it in one hand, he looked at the camera, and he went, you win.
But I honestly think that put me off Street Fighter, and then I was like, you know what, I need to find something else. And then I found Donkey Kong Country, and I was like, all right, this feels nice and safe and cozy. I'm going to stick with this.
Part of it is the 90s era, where you had adult movies, viciously adult movies like RoboCop and Terminator, who were these R-rated movies, I guess, in the States, that were then getting kids' toys.
Yes.
And I will never understand that the customer was, oh, well, we know kids are going to see this, so we'll just kind of, lean into it. But yes, once Paul Davies, Jeremy Whiteley, and the increasing kind of cast of sort of core professionals who we are really loving. In the comics, you have, I'm going to completely mispronounce his name, so I'm sorry, but Roald Marselius doing the art, and Iolanda Zaffino doing the covers, and there's a whole group of people who are like, we didn't know them in 2016, but they're trusted now, and we keep going back to them because we know they get it. But just like everyone else, you kind of need that initial orientation to go, no, yes, they are pirates, but there's no blood, there's no swearing, there's no pillaging. Even the most evil pirates on the seas are pretty, like Rathbone. Oh, are we good to talk about spoilers, by the way?
I think as long as we just say up front, spoilers from here on.
Well, it's not up front anymore, so yeah.
Sorry, Reigle.
Sorry, there's a character called Rathbone. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, you have to leave, Reigle, and read the book, and then come back and listen to this. No more collecting wood crates for you. But so to answer your question fully and finally, there is a core group who has an interest in Sea of Thieves, but equally, we are very interested in bringing in outside opinions. The Mongoose RPG is another great example of that. They came up with their captain of Silas and the crew there, and they had this grand plan, and we kind of slammed the brakes on them a little bit, because what they had initially planned was going to be the most epic thing that would have taken like 30 tall tales to get through, and we had to kind of say, well, no, let's not do that, because there's nowhere for the game to go if you do what you're planning, but let's do this instead. Let's lean into the characters more than the kind of the spectacle of it, and come up with something that's really interesting for the Mongoose RPG.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where expanded media has often tripped up, is sometimes the ambitions and plans outscale the main core thing you are spinning out of. I brought up Star Wars to quite exhaustive detail.
I know what I hope I know what you're going to say here. I hope I know the example.
Well, okay, yeah. So, Star Wars, their expanded universe, which was considered the official canon, the official continuation of Star Wars, like it was all one canon, right? And after the movies, the novels that took place after Return of the Jedi, it just eventually got so ludicrous and so universe shattering that there was nowhere for them to go with any sequels. And of course, one day there are going to be theatrical sequels to the Star Wars trilogy. Of course there were. I don't care what George Lucas said in the 90s. Just think logically, yes, there will be an episode 7. So they had to completely just disregard all of those, like hundreds of novels and short stories and everything, because you can't have this extra galactic invasion by aliens that completely decimate the galaxy and then like have all the children of the characters die or turn to the dark side, off camera. And then, here's episode 7, and have the characters be just going through one traumatic ordeal after another for the last 30 years.
Right, because once it starts going dark, the only place you can take it to make your book sell is even darker.
Right, so, let's just completely not have any of that as canon. And you don't want to do that with Sea of Thieves, where the biggest stuff that's happening is outside of the video game.
Yeah, and I think that's something Sea of Thieves has deftly handled, because I think the issue where you kind of have to scrap all of the Star Wars lore that happened after the original trilogy in order to make the sequel trilogy is you don't want media... You want media outside of your core medium to accentuate it, not override it. Like, Sea of Thieves' ancillary media isn't required reading a lot of the time.
Oh, did you hear that, Chris? Your book is not required reading.
It isn't, but equally, if you do colour in all the pages, you will get a prize if you send it in. So.
No, but Cameron's right, though, because what your novel does is it makes you appreciate characters like Ramsey more, and it's
an enrichment of your understanding, right. But it's not a matter of, oh, well, you want to understand what's going on with this tall tale? Well, you want to understand what's going on unless you go ahead and purchase this novel. And
that is the worst thing.
The other book, and also the comic.
That is the worst thing you can do. And I've seen a number of people kind of... Cameron, I know you're not into Star Trek, so I will lay this out very basically for you. But because I re-listened to the Picard episode in which you said you weren't into Star Trek. Yeah, I'll give you.
We did a Picard episode
on
the previous Athena's Fortune episode.
Sorry, yes, yeah.
Okay.
I was so fixated. It became a Picard episode, but yeah. Cameron raised the points, and in Star Trek Picard, he has 2 Romulan housekeepers, and they're kind of indentured slaves, and in episode 1, that's all they are. I don't know if you guys had Father Ted in the US, but one of them is basically the
boat builder, yeah.
One of them, Father Ted, the boat builder. Yeah, one of them is basically the housekeeper from Father Ted, and in episode 2, they are suddenly revealed to be these kind of badass Kingsman-style Secret Service agents. There is, as in so many things, a prequel comic that launched before the series launched. And if you read the prequel comic, these characters make perfect sense as to why it is that you have a 60-year-old Irish housekeeper leaping around the place and knocking people's heads off. Whereas if you didn't read it, it's confusing. It doesn't make any sense within the narrative, and you really get the impression... In fact, one of the showrunners basically said, oh yeah, we had a deleted scene, but explain that, but we ran out of time. Okay. Your show airs on the internet. You don't have physical media. So yeah, it's a very difficult line to tread. And I'm glad that you thought it all worked out okay for the novel. There were a number of sort of side characters and the like that came into being, or kind of, I guess, came into popularity. They were kind of one-notes. They were written as one-notes, and then the audience glommed onto them. Characters like Briggsy, who I know you guys didn't mention deliberately in the original literary analysis.
I was squirming that I couldn't.
Yeah, go on, mention Briggsy, Cameron. Do it.
Briggsy's great.
Yes, she is, if I do say so myself. But yes.
I didn't appreciate Briggsy to the extent that the internet appreciated her until she made such an impression in your novel, and now I can go back in Sea of Thieves and play that second tall tale, and I'm like, oh wow, Briggsy means more to me now than she did before. But it's not required to enjoy the tall tale, but it does give greater emotional weight to all of the characters like Ramsey or Rathbone, and really, or like even locations like Thieves Haven mean more to me now than just being an infuriating place to dig up treasure. So it definitely, I think, serves that incredibly niche role that expanded media should play, where you're not necessarily making anything bigger or bolder than the core experience itself, but you are providing an emotionally fulfilling experience that then in turn makes that property mean more at the same time.
And Briggsy is one of those pleasing instances where it was all Mike and my team. I had written her in my novel as a purely incidental character. It was rule of 3. I wanted 3 people to come and try and break into Ramsey's cursed chest. So it was Slate, it was Briggsy, it was Grey Marrow. I didn't think anything more about her. Then when the Tall Tales started to kind of gather steam and go into full production, rather than just kind of, can we do this? What is the scope of this? And the other kind of... Everything in video games, the ideas that you have exist in a little bit of a cloud before they become greenlit, where you know you're definitely doing them. So you kind of have to scope out, this would be brilliant, but can we actually do it? And Briggsy in the Tall Tales was definitely part of that. And when Mike kind of took me in and said, these are the Tall Tales, these are what we're planning for them, and we want Briggsy to be a part of it, I was like, whoa, it's Briggsy! I remember her! The fact that Mike had kind of glommed onto her and wanted to expand her character as a female Indiana Jones, as he put it, as this kind of truly rogue, truly renegade pirate who would just be borne along by the excitement and the thrill of finding new stuff. Which is different, I think, from Ramsey and Rathbone. Rathbone is obviously driven by greed and gold. Ramsey kind of, he doesn't want the power, but he wants the kind of safety, almost. He wants the order. The freedom to be able to go and explore, but within this kind of structure where everybody recognizes their role. That is Ramsey. Whereas Briggsy is like complete anarchist. She's chaotic good. And Mike had obviously recognized something in that, and I'm really glad that he did.
So I guess now that we're getting deep into kind of, we've established spoilers are okay to get into, we can talk to a bit more of the meat of the book. So something I don't think we've really brought up so far in this episode is that the novel is kind of 2 books in one, with the alternating chapters between the perspective of Ramsey and Lorena. So what was your writing process on like that, kind of with 2 stories that intertwine with each other but go back and forth?
Honestly, it was nothing more complicated than that I wanted to tell 2 stories, and this seemed like a way to get a good sort of 2-for-1 deal. I knew that the lore of the Sea of Thieves was going to be like extremely important. This is going to be, and this was back before the game launched, so we had less of an idea. We hoped, and we were all like really working hard to make sure that it would be popular, and the team were kind of absolutely going flat out to kind of make sure that would be the case, but you never know what's going to happen. So the novel at that point felt like our one chance to make the kind of definitive lore statement of, this is how the Sea of Thieves started. These are the early days, and this is the backup of all the stuff that you're never going to get in the game, because it would be a bit boring to read in game, honestly. And so when we had that kind of desire down, I also had the discussion with Mike where we were talking about, well, okay, if I don't know what Sea of Thieves is and I pick up this book, how can I kind of come to grips with it? How can I kind of get a feel for what I'm going to be going through? Should it maybe be the archetypical journey of the first crew, that experience of meeting up, coming together with a crew that you don't really trust, overcoming your differences, going out on a voyage, discovering something along the way that sends you on a larger voyage, getting in over your head, and kind of coming back triumphant. And we were caught in a little bit of a pattern, and I kind of said, ¿Por qué no los dos? Because I was influenced by many Taco Ballad bits.
The writing process behind that, though, did you write like Ramsey's all in one chunk, and then Lorena's all in one chunk, or did you actually just like alternate in your writing, chapter to chapter?
I put together a very basic premise, because at this point, obviously, Insight Editions had already kind of said we want to do a book, and I had no author credit. So I had to very quickly kind of prove my sort of authorial chops to them. So I put together the outline, and then I wrote a chapter, and I think the chapter I wrote was chapter 3, which is Lorena's second chapter, where she goes and gets the bananas and speaks to the shopkeeper, and basically scribbled down a very early version of that in an all-nighter, and like about 2,000 words, I guess, and punted that over to kind of go, this is the sort of a tone of what I'm presenting. The rest of it then became a case of, okay, what is the theme of the book? Well, the theme of the book is twofold. It's exploring the origins of the Sea of Thieves, but it's also kind of going through these eyes of a brand new crew who've never been there before, and what will their experience be. And then it's, okay, well, what is the meaning of the book? And this has kind of never wavered. I enjoy doing, when I can, touching upon the arguments that I think players are likely to have. And in Athena's Fortune, the argument is very much between the Rathbone style of player of, it's not Sea of Friends, let's just steal all the gold, let's do what we can, we're meant to be pirates, it's progression, get as rich as you can. And then the Ramsey side, which is lore, exploration, working together to go and see all the islands and find all the stuff. And even before the game launched, I was very conscious that was going to be the divide between the two kinds of players you would have. And I really wanted to capture that.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that, considering that you are writing an entire novel where every character is a pirate or a seafaring criminal or a facilitator of seafaring criminals. How do you then find the moral compass of, well, okay, there are these seafaring criminals, but some of them aren't quite as bad as the other ones. Did you find that as a challenge at all? Like trying to paint somebody like Ramsey or Lorena as more morally justified than the Rathbones? Or am I reading too much into it and there is no moral judgments being cast by the word of the author? I
mean, there's death of the author to consider for sure, and whatever I say is not what you might go with, but Ramsey and Mercia definitely have the right idea in my mind, which is that it is not about the gold, it's about the glory. There is the exploration and the core loop, as Mike defined it, of Sea of Thieves, is you go out on an amazing adventure, you encounter other people along the way, and whatever happens between your crew and the crew that you encounter, you all go home and you have an amazing tale to tell. And that's the kind of the ideal gameplay loop, is not so much that the good guys win, but both of you have an exciting time, and you each kind of come away, whether you won or lost, because it doesn't really matter. There's always more gold, and your reputation never decreases. But whether you won or lost, you had a really interesting interaction, and that is the core of what matters for Sea of Thieves.
You say that, but apparently my reputation has been decreasing with the Animal Rights Guild that has been hiding in the shadows of the game the entire time.
Well, we have a Twisted Knife as well from the Tales of the Sea of Thieves book, and they have yet to make an appearance. And they were the kind of the counterpart as originally imagined from the Order of Souls, where they would only put bounties on living pirates.
Oh, so they're sort of kind of like what the Reaper's Bones have evolved into.
The most dangerous hunters.
Yeah. Speaking to animal rights, I did want to thank you personally and formally for actually rating Mercia as a vegetarian who isn't a joyless scold or radical zealot, because that is a rare thing in fiction. And she actually ended up being my favorite character in the novel. Not necessarily as a result of that, but there's definitely some correlation there. But as she was my favorite character, I also wanted to admonish you for making me cry when she passed away.
Oh, we all cry when she passes away.
You are as manipulative as a Pixar movie, so thank you for that.
I will take varying degrees of pride in that based on whether I'm the opening 10 minutes of Up or whether I'm like the last 10 minutes of Inside Out where Riley gets on the bus.
I cried during WALL-E, and I don't know why. I'm just a sap. I cry during most movies. I don't know. So don't consider yourself so special that you made me cry. It's apparently not hard to do.
If it makes you feel any better, I cry 100% of the time during the last few minutes of Meet Joe Black. So
you just wanted more movie. That's all.
Yeah, I wanted more than the 3.5 hour movie of Anthony Hopkins.
I feel like I've only just met Joe Black, and then it's ending already.
Anthony Hopkins monologuing about how cold lamb sandwiches remind him of his ex-wife, and I'm just in pieces.
Speaking of wives, I also cried at the end of the book when Ramsey explained the meaning behind the Athena's fortune name, and that Athena was his much neglected wife. So I wanted to ask real quick, was this always the explanation behind the scenes for what Athena's fortune was? Why that term was bandied about? I know the code name for the game was Athena early on, but also can you analyze me and explain to me why I found that part so moving?
So Athena's fortune, Athena was never Ramsey's wife. I don't think... Mike and I had a lot of collaboration and kind of discussion and stuff, but I think Athena was always, and Athena's fortune from his perspective was always meant to be the kind of the end goal of the game, and that was like a nice nod to the game's in development name. In terms of why you found it sad, I think it's because Ramsey clearly misses his kids, but he doesn't do anything to go and get them. He is well aware of his limitations, and that is probably his only limitation. Like, he's willing to go and fight through a deadly fog that will kill you. He's willing to go and stick his face into the skeleton lord's face and tell him why they suck, and all these other brave actions. And the fact that he is unable to actually kind of go and reconcile with his wife and meet his kids beyond the very kind of absentee dad thing of, I could get you a job when it comes to Sea of Thieves. Come on. That's very sort of dadly parenting. I mean, I'm not actually going to come and engage with you on an intellectual or an emotional level, but if you want a job... and you want to get rich, come see your dad out here and he'll forgive you. But no, even the fact that it's... I know some sources have said that it's... Oh, he must be Ramsey Singh. No, he's not Ramsey Singh. He's Captain Ramsey. Whether that is his first name or his surname, we don't know. They are DeMarco and Lesedi Singh, and the intimation there is that they may have taken their surname from... Athena's second husband, potentially.
Oh, God, now I have to update files on our website that list him as Ramsey
He's not
Singh.
Ramsey Singh, he's Captain Ramsey, and you're not to know whether that's his first name or his surname unless you ask him nicely.
You really like doing this, too, because it's like, it's Captain Flameheart, there's the father, and then there's
Hey,
the
look,
son.
I wrote some Duke dialogue this last month that kind of very heavily, Falcor is sated now. He's like sleeping on a bed of subscribers. He's all good.
It's bad enough I have to field the question about where's Donkey Kong Jr. on every given day of my life. And now you introduce all this other nonsense with this game and the expanded universe, so thank you for
Well, I
that.
think you already touched upon it, is that Flameheart Jr. is not Flameheart's son. He is Flameheart's adopted son.
Well, that's still his son.
I'm not saying that adopted children should just go and my relationship with my parents means nothing. But there is more lore that can potentially be in play there, and as to... Yeah, the fact that he is adopted may well or may not. I'll have to say. But it might one day factor into understanding Flameheart's motivations Flint Senior's motivations.
All right, well, I'm just thinking about all those files I have to update now after this.
I'm sorry.
Just
Should we start at page 1
it's fine.
of the novel?
Did you find it challenging to say anything new with pirate fiction? Because it is a well-worn genre, and it's usually set in a very closed-off period in history, a couple hundred years. And, even the fantastical tropes are pretty rigid and familiar at this point. So I wouldn't say it's as exhausted as a genre as something like zombie apocalypses, where you're just going to get the same thing regurgitated with new characters, but that still blindly follow the same archetypes. But it's it's up there as one of the ones that's been pretty just well treaded at this point. So how did you avoid just retelling the same old with this book?
I'll be honest, I did not attempt to tell the novel as a pirate fiction story in any way. It is a fantasy story, but the Sea of Thieves universe is so different with regards to its inclusivity and how I wanted Ramsey in particular and the people around him to kind of have their moral core, that it is... it's not a pirate novel in a fictional sense. It's an adventure novel for sure, but they really don't do any kind of... If it was a pirate novel, they would be a big bad and they would sail. It's almost like a precursor to a heist movie where Ramsey would kind of sail over to Mercia and lay out the plan of how he's going to break into this fort, and she'd go, "Oh, you son of a bitch, I'm in." Jeff does a much better Morty voice than I do, but
I guess now that you pointed out, if I think back, I don't think there's a lot of like traditional, like Errol Flynn like swashbuckling in the context of the novel, because a lot of the fights between characters are either resolved quickly through some sort of strategic maneuver, or are against a supernatural force, in which case it becomes abundantly clear that just sorting away at the problem isn't going to work.
I think, a good example for me is Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one, Curse of the Black Pearl, where Jack Sparrow and Will Turner, both of whom at this point are kind of presented as protagonists. We don't know much about Jack yet, but we know we like him, and Will is obviously a good guy. He's a little bit kind of mumble-tongued around Keira Knightley, and he's clearly trying to be a good bloke. And they have to fight, because circumstances make them. And that is a more engrossed fight than you will find in anything in Sea of Thieves all up, really, about kind of one-on-one parry, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that works because we don't want either of them to lose. So the fact every time one of them makes a strike towards the other, it's kind of tense for us because we don't really want them to be fighting. Whereas in Sea of Thieves, everybody that you fight is a skeleton or a guy named Flameheart or Bumface or... I'm giving...
I can't wait for that tall
I'm
tale.
giving away other skeleton lords here, and I shouldn't, but yeah. When Bumface rears about the ground and goes, "Who disturbs Captain Bumface then, eh? You're looking a little cheeky." Well, that's pretty cut and dried in terms of morality. You know who you're rooting for. So it's okay for the fight to be over quickly without a lot of swashbuckling, which is really kind of extending the tension. And actually, when you think about it, it's giving the characters time to interact. Will Turner and Jack Sparrow would never have had cause to have a very enjoyable conversation if they weren't trading blows that ultimately go nowhere. But as a player, you don't want that. You don't want to hit a skeleton captain 20 times for them to go, "I guess I'm leaving then. Bye!" And back into the sand they go.
Actually, I would love that.
Well, it's the old fake-outs boss that you have to fight 3 times at various points.
That's new dialogue for the ancient skellies.
Yes. "Oh no, me coins! Better scarper!"
You have quite a variety of characters in this book, and they all have like very detailed descriptions of what all of them would look like. But if you, Chris, had to do this, imagine like this is going to be put to film. Could you
I have to
fantasy cast your characters with famous actors?
Why, yes, I could, Cameron, because I did that back in, I think probably October of 2018. So if you can bear with me, scraping backwards and forwards until I find the email I've just found.
How many of them have been canceled since then, though? You gotta...
That I don't know. One of them is a kind of a co-star on a Netflix series. Netflix loves to cancel its series, but I know that that was not what you meant. Okay, so yeah, for the main characters, when I was writing them, I thought of the archetypes first, and this might be my inexperience because this was my first novel, but I didn't have, or maybe no one does this, I don't know, but I didn't have physical archetypes in mind for them. I had how they would speak, how they would stand, how they would move, but not kind of sexuality, height, ethnicity, any of that sort of baked in. However, when it came time to publish the novel, I actually did. So Lorena is based, or I would say, in my documents here, which I have on screen, I actually said she could be played by, and that's how I pushed all of them. Lorena could be played by Lorena, no relation, Lorena, Andrea. And she is currently starring in the Netflix series Warrior Nun.
This is why I should have Google image search ready to go.
Yeah.
So I typed Lorena, and the first thing that came up was Lorena, Sea of Thieves.
Excellent. I would take in Lorena Andrea's career. I'm sorry, Lorena. I've cancelled you. The next one is Adelheid, and I had said that she was sort of mid to late 20s. She would be Ghanaian, and she would, despite having the Germanic name, and that she would be played by Letitia Wright, or could be played by Letitia Wright, who you guys might know from Black Panther. And the idea there was I was really kind of trying to push... Adelheid is a Germanic name, and I wanted to kind of really stoke the idea that in the Sea of Thieves, because it's a bit smaller, it's a bit more compressed, people from different backgrounds and cultures and nationalities would be mingling a lot more frequently. So you could have a character who was Ghanaian of nationality but had a Germanic name because that's how her parents met, which would be kind of infrequent in the 1600s of the sort of the wider world. But in the Sea of Thieves, no, it's entirely possible. Faisal, I had him down as mid-30s, nationality Egyptian, and he could be played by a young Saeed Badrea.
So I was picturing him as Danny DeVito, so I got
know,
that
yes, you know,
completely
because you and Cameron went over this. The idea was that he was kind of shaped like an egg, and
right,
yeah, he's extremely sort of fat and sort of waddly and cheerful. But yeah, in terms of his nationality, he was very much Egyptian, very much bearded. You had him as like a Frasier, whereas I had him as more of kind of like a souk market, like a kind of a fast talking, ripping off all the tourists kind of guy.
Well, clearly you've never encountered Kelsey Grammer in LAX. Exact same thing.
Hello and welcome to E3. I'm Kelsey Grammer. Would you like a souvenir? And then Little Ned I had as being done by Richard Ridings, who was the voice of Thorn. And Richard Ridings is remarkable because he's like 6'8", and his voice, which he has down here, he's not putting on. He just naturally speaks this way.
I can definitely, we've all been looking at these names as you say them, and I'm thinking, yeah, I absolutely can see that as Ned.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's spot on. That's pretty much what I envisioned in my head, actually. So well done there.
Yes,
also, apology to Richard Ridings.
Thanks for taking my 2005 in-person experience with Richard Ridings and going, you will be my new voice. You giant man, you. And then, yeah, for Ramsey, I wrote down played by the Sea of Thieves Pirate Lord.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Rathbone is Alex McQueen, and that's M-A-C Queen. He is an actor who was in the thick of it, and he also played Big Finish's first original incarnation of the Master in Doctor Who.
And he looks like he's halfway to skeleton anyway, so perfect.
Yeah, he's kind of got that balding, severe thing going on. So he was what I kind of imagined that character would look like. Again, just to reiterate, I came up with all the characters first, and this was me kind of backfilling to find actors. Mercia was a Norwegian actor named Michelle Williams. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the appropriate one here, because that's a very common name. But let's have a look.
Yeah, I'm just getting the Dawson's Creek actor.
Yeah, no, she's a lot younger. She may have been lost to time there, but she's kind of got this very sort of short, cropped, blonde, Scandinavian haircut, and yeah, she's not anywhere near Ramsey's age. I know you guys were questioning how old Mercy is, but yeah, she's quite young in the Athenas, but probably kind of early 20s.
And yet she was the first to die. All right.
Well, it happens. And it sucks.
I also have to say it was interesting in the book to get some indication of what Rathbone looked like before things happened to him, and it's striking how different it was, because just judging by... Like, this was a character before the Athena's Fortune novel who had only really existed in my head as concept art and a statue on the E3 show floor, where he just kind of comes off as a feral troll man with a shovel.
Which he is, yeah, now.
Yeah, I was just imagining him as Rash from Battletoads, because I just assumed he looked like another E3 statue.
Rushbone.
Yeah. Oh, God, that sounds like a horrifying condition you could get
It's a venereal disease, yeah. By the way...
I would definitely contract some rashes in the Sea of Thieves, I have to say.
Before we talk about venereal curses, I should say that Shan, first of all, is the actor G.U. G-E-Y-O-U is his name, and he was the most sort of cheerful... And again, all of these, I have to say, they were not based on this person. I didn't go looking for a person and go, write a character about them. But the character came first, and when it was like, well, okay, I'll go and look for someone who would vaguely fit that. But that brings me to a point where you guys, in your Athena's Fortune literary analysis, had asked, you wanted to know, what is Rathbone's curse? Did he get the skeleton curse? Did he get the gold curse?
Yeah, or was it the fact that the gold curse can, in fact, skelify you if you don't take proper care of yourself?
I recently clarified this with Mike, because I was aware that it was only going to get kind of more complicated going forwards. There are two types of skeleton curse in the Sea of Thieves. The first is, like Wanda, you get something that skelifies you. You aren't dead, but it makes you physically resemble a skeleton, like your flesh falls off, you become bony man. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of the sort of skeleton lords in the Sea of Thieves have that. The other type is, it can be a curse, or it can be sheer sort of force of personality within the Sea of Thieves that means when you should be dead, you don't stop going. You just keep on. Like in Rathbone's case, he just kind of kept... I will not die, I have to get these coins. I will not die, I have to get these coins. And he had the gold curse, but the fact that he became a skeleton, the fact that he didn't die, was entirely down to this kind of persistence of will. And if you have sufficient persistence of will in the Sea of Thieves, you can live on as a skeleton.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of sounds like he's more of a traditional, like, horror, like, restless soul kind of monster, as opposed to... usually the case that we've seen in the Sea of Thieves, where it's the active machinations of a cursed object.
Yeah, so like Wanda is an example of a type 1. She got kind of skeletonized before she was dead, whereas Gold Hoarder is definitely type 2 in that he had a curse, that's the gold curse, it's kind of irrelevant. He would have kept going. He can't die. He's just so consumed now. He's almost embodying greed in the Sea of Thieves.
I'm really just hung up on the... You mentioned that their flesh falls off when they get the standard Skelly curse, and now I'm picturing, and I feel like this is the first time I've been able to reference the X-Files on this podcast for a while. The X-Files Season 8 episode where What's-His-Face turns into a super soldier, and he goes into the shower and all of his decaying flesh gets washed off and you see it like splatter down by the drain. Is it like that?
I'm struggling to remember season 8 X-Files. Is that the one with the genie? No, wait, that's season 6.
No.
Is that the one with the virtual reality? No, that's season 1. X-Files is stupid.
The episode where they dig up Mulder, where they where Mulder has been buried for months and he's presumed dead, and then they dig him up and they find he has a heartbeat. And this somehow isn't a major news story that an FBI agent has had his body exhumed after being buried for 3 months, and this proves the paranormal. No, we're just going to gloss over that.
And they say, Mulder, I thought you were dead because you got hit in the face by that missile. He's like, no.
No, that's X-Files season 10.
Oh.
Yeah, we really don't want to talk about those.
That just sounds like Simpsons Bible stories to me.
Ralph, I thought you were dead. Nope.
Anyway, so please never put a scene where somebody with a skelly curse takes a shower, and we don't need that.
Luckily, pirates are not big on showers. They prefer just oily, luxurious baths.
It's a sequel idea for the makers of Donkey Kong Bath Time right there.
That actually brings me to the real point of my joining this interview, which is I'm on Orangutan Gang on the Switch version of Donkey Kong Country, and I need you guys to help guide me to the secret exits.
I don't even know half of those. I would have to sit down and play it for 45 minutes.
I actually
really
very recently did all of them, and it's a funny thing with Orangutan Gang where I have known where the bonus areas are to do them in previous playthroughs, but I never remember on a brand new playthrough where every single one of them is, and I'm reluctant to ever look up a guide, so it just takes me forever until I either find them or resign and look it up.
Right, because if you look up a guide, that's like you're not as good as you used to be, and you are definitely much better than you used to be. Like, mechanically, you've got this, but yeah. And then you find that you had to go left, and then left again with Espresso? What?
So I just checked Golden Sands blog post, and they have nothing on Orangutan Gang, so I'm going to check Amir's site.
Oh, Amir has the beta version of Orangutan Gang.
Oh, yeah, of course he does. So speaking, though, to past rare games and rare nerdery.
I have 29 left on names, so yes.
Yes, as a vintage rare geek, how did you cope keeping Athena's Fortune as free from that nonsense as possible? Let me explain. So I've always wondered, were I ever to have the opportunity to contribute to the lore of a rare game, or the shared rare universe, or the DKU, or any permutation of phrase it takes, would I be able to show restraint as a professional writing a professional piece of entertainment? Or would I be loading it up with references? This is my chance. Would I be filling it with just things to soothe my parched fanboy thirst? For like, I'm writing a Sea of Thieves novel. Finally, I can write a covert origin to Nipper the Hermit Crab from Treasure Trove Cove. Like, did you really have to fight the devil on your shoulder in this case?
Well, what you have to remember, Hyle, is that I first came to notoriety when I released the Rare Scribes fan game, Mr. Pants 2000. And so
yes.
I very much view Rare's continuity as the Mr. Pants shared universe. And in that regard, I filled every page of Athena's Fortune with dozens upon dozens of Mr. Pants lore references. It will take decades to unpack. Some of them are in ciphers. Some of them are just... the technology to understand them hasn't even been invented yet. But looking at the larger Donkey Kong universe, the truth of the matter is I was high on Sea of Thieves for this. I'd spent the last kind of year or two deeply invested in working out the lore of this game, and I knew that there was going to be a lot of fun to be had from just asking questions like, although the comics eventually got this one, why do bananas heal you? Why do you come back when you die? Why is it that everyone can swim faster, fall off ledges without being hurt? they're not the main tenets of where you tell a story. They're just really fun things that you want to include. The stories that I wanted to tell in the novel were the stories of the people who were going to be playing the games for the first time, the people who said, "Shut up, I'm looking in the water." And I think in that regard, when you have an entire canvas to work with, you don't have the room to work with too many Easter eggs, but also it doesn't occur to you that you should, because you're too busy kind of like within Sea of Thieves universe, making Mr. Pants be on a wall in Torfret is not an Easter egg. Having an explanation as to why you can fire yourself out of a cannon, or name dropping an island, that is an Easter egg in such a new piece of lore.
I'm sorry, I was running a blacklight over my Athena's Fortune to see if I could find Helpo. Can you repeat that?
Can you not find Helper?
Well, I'll have to get back to this later. It's like the Bible code now.
You just have to look at the first letter of every sentence and decode the cipher.
There's a Jam Jars reference. If you look on all of the first letters of every sentence, it kind of spells out, if the sea you wish to thieve, hold down Z trigger and press right bumper. It's a little less elegant when I've made it there, but yeah.
Well then, let me ask you this. Having written an official tie-in to Sea of Thieves, are there any historical rare franchises you would love to supplement with a novel? Hypothetically, like let's say if you had free reign, it could be Captain Skyhawk. If you could pick any, what would you pick to write your novel?
It's a tricky one. The easiest answer is Donkey Kong, because I grew up on Donkey Kong, and I know you guys would like to hear that. But honestly, Donkey Kong is kind of tough because although the lore has never been driven into deeply, the broad strokes are all kind of there. So I would actually have to say Perfect Dark, because there is an unfulfilled promise where Perfect Dark was originally going to have 3 novels that would lead you from the events of Perfect Dark to the events of Perfect Dark Zero, or vice versa. Starting with PD Zero, then you have Initial Vector, I think it's Second Front, and there was going to be a third one, and then the third one, for whatever reason, never materialized, and I feel like that's a gap that would be really kind of fun to fill. It's not as creative because the characters are all on their roots, and the lore either side of the novel is nailed down, but equally, actually, that can make it just as much fun, because you're kind of looking to bring your own kind of slants to the series and kind of make your mark, even within these kind of rigid narrative timeline moments. And there was never one for the third novel, so yeah, I would actually go for the third Perfect Dark novel.
You could also explain why Perfect Dark Zero never addressed coronavirus.
Perfect Dark Zero never addressed coronavirus because it's a fictional video game.
I don't even want to read your novel now if you're going to come at me with that attitude.
I've kind of struggled to think of what questions to ask during this episode because we've had a direct line to you, essentially, for quite some time, thanks to our Sea of Thieves streams.
Yeah, you should put your party on private if you didn't want that kind of inside knowledge.
But is there a question you wish we would have asked you today?
Ooh. Which Brothers Bear is most likely to appear in Sea of Thieves?
Barnacle. That's not even a hard question.
It's Bear.
All right, now that's strike 2.
Is that the bear that's on the front of Slate's ship?
Oh, no, I think it's just a bear. Bear's dad.
Okay, so that's just bear, spelled B-A-R-E.
No, bears don't have names, Cameron. Actually, I have another note here. You guys wanted to know about Kyrie, the 4th member of the Unforgiven, who got eaten by a shark.
Oh, right.
And why should it... Yeah. So this is that there are a number of little things in the novel that, because of when it was written and also because of the kind of differences in media, are a little slightly off. One of them is, for example, in the game, if you go to the Shores of Gold, you will go there following Briggsy's sloop that crashes onto the beach. In the novel, the crew of the Unforgiven go there following Steel Eye Simeon's memories, and he also crashes his sloop up on the beach. So that's like a kind of a little retcon there. But in Kyrie's case, the idea I think I had was that generally in the game you return from a Sea of the Damned after a few seconds, but in the wider world, in my novels, it can actually be a little bit longer than that. The ferryman, maybe when Larina was journeying, or at least when Kyrie died, he was a little bit less kind of forgiving in his mission, and so he would be more inclined to kind of keep you aboard the ferry for days, months, years, as he does with Captain Quince, because they sink the Black Gauntlet, and Quince is stuck there, and Adelheid has to kind of actually go, no, come on, let him go, let him come with me. And that kind of wipes out their debt. So, yeah, in my novels, and just generally, you guys get lucky in the game with the ferryman, but generally speaking, he might not let you come back right away, or even at all. Are there any other burning questions you want to ask me before I dispute?
Yes. Now that you've infuriated me twice over, can you tell us, and if you can't, that's fine, can you tell us if there's going to be a second Sea of Thieves novel at some point? And if so, what it's going to focus on?
The second novel has been twice alluded to or announced now. It is in progress. It is on the way. There is no confirmed release date or anything like that, particularly because I'm kind of splitting my time between it and other Sea of Thieves duties. So I guess from the public perspective, whatever I work on is good for you guys because you get lore either way. It's just you're not certain whether you have to go and pick it up from a bookshop or order it on Amazon, or if you will get it in a monthly update.
You will not cover it out of spite now.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.
That's the closest we'll get to TT and Sea of Thieves.